This is the story of my rescue dog, Timmy. So, to give you some background, I used to live in Central America where I served as a Peace Corps volunteer. It was a time in my life when I was very lonely, depressed, and I had wanted to have a dog for years, but had never had the time or place to do so. And there were a few litters of puppies around, but they just all looked happy and energetic and playful, and for some reason, I just felt like they didn't really need me. I've never bought a pet from a store or a breeder. I've only ever adopted animals from shelters. And I wanted to have a dog who was special to me. It just had to be someone who needed me in my life, if that makes sense. It had to be special. It really had to feel special in order for it to work. In all those happy, healthy puppies I would see, sure, yeah, they were cute, of course, but to me, they were just all looks for some reason. And then one day, when I was out hiking, I saw this little orange puppy who didn't look all cute and happy. This one just looked really sad and depressed. It was just sitting there, not moving or anything, not running around like all these other puppies I was used to seeing. And so I got closer and I noticed that it had this giant abdomen. It was all swollen, it was missing fur, and it just looked really ill. So I walked up to the little house where this puppy was sitting and began talking to the man who appeared to be the owner of the puppy. And he told me that the puppy was dying. And as I looked at it, it really did look like it was on the verge of death. It was laying on its side, barely able to move, covered in hundreds, but I mean hundreds of ticks, sores, swollen everywhere. And I kneeled down and I touched its head, and as I did that, it looked up at me and began wagging its tail. And I felt something at that moment. I felt something special. I felt like this dog wanted to live. I could just feel it. And I asked the man if it was a male or a female, and I still remember to this day the way he told me that she was una hembrita, as they say in Spanish, which means a little female. And I just fell in love that day. I asked a man if he would let me take her and try to save her life, and he agreed. I actually didn't have a house of my own yet at this point and was living with a family, but I knew that this little puppy really didn't have long to live. So I made an arrangement with my landlord. I paid my rent early, and I moved into a house that very next day. And that same day, I got the key from the landlord, and the first thing I did was hike out the hour and a half back all the way up to where this puppy was. I put her in a cardboard box, and then I hiked her all the way back down to a road where I caught a bus to a nearby city with a vet. At one point, I actually thought that the puppy had died. She just stopped moving in the box, and it really smelled like death. But as we pulled up to the vet, she poked her head out of the box, and I sighed in relief. The vet looked at me and just said this was the worst looking dog she'd ever seen. But my girl just sat there, wagging her tail weakly, and the vet agreed to run some tests. She turned out to be sick with Ehrlichia, which is a deadly tick-borne disease, and had a lot of internal and external parasites as well, and severe anemia, of course. We spent 20 minutes with the vet trying to remove all of her ticks, but even after 20 minutes, she still had a bunch of them. So the vet eventually gave me some prescriptions, and I headed back home with my dog. I guess you could say we moved in together that day. I named her Tim Campy, or Timmy for short, which is a name that I'd actually picked out almost a decade ago from an old Japanese anime pet that I really liked as a teenager. It took a lot of patience and care to give Timmy all of her medicine and to slowly get her to eat more and more, little by little. I spent another half hour at my home removing another 70 more ticks from her body. The first day I had her, she seemed to do okay. But then in the evening, around 6 or 7 p.m., she began to have trouble breathing. I could tell something was wrong, but I didn't really know what. She seemed to be unable to lay down, and every time she would try lowering her head and chest, she would start to choke and hyperventilate. I tried to call the vet, but it was past business hours, so nobody answered. I tried calling several other vets in the area until my phone eventually ran out of credit. And it was getting really late. It was past 10 p.m. by now. And Timy was just doing worse and worse. She was coughing and wheezing nonstop now. I still had some vets left on this list that I'd made, so I took all the cash that I could find in my house and ran out to a payphone where I dialed number after number after number without ever getting any response until I ran out of money and was just crouching on the ground, still holding the phone in one hand, just crying in frustration. I ran back home. I'm not even sure if Timy would still be alive at this point. But she was. She could barely breathe. She was so tired she kept passing out, falling over, and then hyperventilating and wheezing as she struggled to breathe. I sat down and propped myself up against a wall and put my hand under her head and chest to keep her upright while she fell in and out of consciousness, hyperventilating and struggling to breathe every couple of minutes. I honestly thought that she was going to die. I just sat there, keeping her head and chest up, silently crying and hoping, praying almost, that she might actually make it. And I told her several times that I really loved her. But I just figured it was a matter of time. And I held her like that all night, just waiting for her to die. And then she didn't. And 6 a.m. came around and the public transport began running again. So I put her back in her cardboard box and headed back to the vet. I sat in front of the vet office for half an hour until they opened with my dog in my arms, just barely alive. But Timy made it. She pulled through. The vet told me that she must have had fluid buildup in her lungs. She gave her a diuretic treatment and Timy got better. And then we headed back home.
Timy, come. Timy, Timy, come. Come. Bring it. Timy. Come here. Timy. Do you want it? Do you want it? No. Timy, Timy. Timy. Come. You want the stick? You want the stick? Here, Timy. Good job. Timy, come. No, with the stick. Well, wait, when you start getting into my skirt, it's just gonna get less. Let's see. So beautiful.
So, I gave her a little bone toy. Guess what she did with it? Timy? Yeah? Look at this. This is good. Oh, you had a good spot right there. What's wrong with that spot? I know. You got it all covered in dirt, you idiot. Huh? Come here. Timy, come here. Mm-hmm. So she's digging a hole with her head because she hasn't figured out her paws yet. Where'd you put it? You can't bury it if you don't remember where you put it anymore. After that, Timy slowly got better and better over time. I had to give her a lot of medicine for several months, but she made it. She was very playful right from the beginning. This was just a crazy playful dog. And I taught her how to fetch very early on, which is still her favorite activity to this day. She will follow me on hikes, begging for me to throw a stick for her to chase. It took months for her swelling to go down, and her ribcage is still slightly wider than it should be because of the long-term abdominal swelling that she suffered from. But the swelling did eventually get much, much better. And her fur began to grow back, and she even started growing too. And every time I took her to the vet just couldn't believe that she had actually survived. All of my neighbors, my friends, my family, who had all thought that I was crazy for trying to save this dog's life, were amazed at her recovery. Me and her became really inseparable. I took her on hikes with me everywhere, and she was, and still is, just simply addicted to life. She loves absolutely everything and everyone. She would want to play with every single person, every single animal, be it a dog or not, that she would encounter, and she just became a favorite amongst all the local children. She really made a miraculous recovery, and she's very strong-willed. But I knew that from the start. I could feel it. I could feel her drive for life. That very first time I touched her head and she wagged her tail. It just was a special moment and a very special dog.
Timy, come. Timy, sit. Sit. Good. Timy, stay. Stay. Good. Come here, Timy. Oh, good job, little Timy. Timy, sit. Timy, sit. Good. You're such a pumpkin. Hi, Timy. Good. Come here.
And over time, I started training her little by little. I took her for her first swim, which she did not enjoy much. Even now, water still isn't her favorite thing. She tags along whenever we go to the river, and we have to kind of, I don't want to say drag her in, but talk her into hopping into the river. And she's not a big fan of bathing, but she'll do it. She puts up with it, and I think she's getting a little better with it. She would also befriend every animal that she came across. She made a lot of dog friends in the neighborhood, a lot of play buddies that she would go and play with, and she even befriended a few non dog animals. And as time passed, I really felt like she was just such a sociable creature that she could really use another sibling. And so began the search for dog number two. But that's a whole new video.